Do you guys remember earthquake drills? Well, I grew up in California, so earthquake drills were just part of growing up. I don't know, it was normal. Do they do it everywhere? I don't know. But look, it seems like we did earthquake drills all of the time, okay? And despite that, honestly, when an earthquake does happen, I go blank. I don't remember what to do. When it's happening, it's like, do I go to a doorway? Do I hide under a desk? Do I stop, drop, and roll? Oh, yeah. That's for fires. Sorry, wrong emergency. I do confuse them though. When the last time there was an earthquake, I did roll. I stopped, dropped, and rolled. It did nothing. Anyways, some earthquakes are so big they have literally changed the size and rotation of the earth. The whole thing terrifies me because I learned that sometimes an earthquake is only the beginning of a major disaster. Earthquakes, scary, but they can trigger other events like tsunamis, fires, and even human sacrifice. I'm not kidding. And once upon a time, an earthquake almost caused a nuclear disaster. So, let's talk about it. Welcome to the dark history of earthquakes. Oh no, I'm shaking. Oh, earthquake. I call them booby bouncers. Earthquakes? Yeah. They're booby bouncers. Oh no! Hi friends, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Bailey Sarian, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, Dark History. Look, here, we believe history does not have to be boring. It might be tragic, sometimes it's happy, but either way, it's our dark history. Now, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe because I'm always here for you posting new content. And also let me know what you think in the comment section down below because I do read comments at the end. You might miss it. I respond to you. Anywho, earthquakes. First of all, what's an earthquake? If you don't live in a place that gets earthquakes, they might kind of seem harmless, silly, but earthquakes can be terrifying. Personally, whenever an earthquake hits California, and it's been happening a lot lately, I just freeze. I completely freeze. You don't want to be near me during some kind of emergency because I'm one of those people who freezes. It sucks. Anywho, I know I'm supposed to do something like get under a table or what, but literally, I just go blank and I go, good luck. I just accept it. Anywho, so what's an earthquake? Imagine Earth's surface. Okay, it's like a giant puzzle made of pieces called tectonic plates. These plates, they're constantly moving, but they don't move smoothly, okay? They kind of grind and they push up against each other. It's like a middle school dance. What was that about? It wasn't even dancing. It was just, that's what those plates are doing. These plates have a lot of friction between them, and sometimes it leads to the plates getting stuck. And when this happens, it causes pressure to build up over time. So with these tectonic plates, when the pressure becomes too much, they slip, and then an earthquake happens. And it's kind of like Earth's way of, letting off that built up steam. It's like a fart, it's just pressure, it's building up, it's in your tummy, and eventually you can't take it anymore, and it's just like... So the fart is kind of like an earthquake. Yeah, it's Earth's fart. And farting's good, Otherwise you would explode. And so would Earth. So it has to release the tension. Now, you always hear about earthquakes being measured with a number, and this is because of something called the Richter scale. Now, the scale was invented in 1935 by a guy whose name was Charles Richter. He was an American seismologist, which essentially means he's an earthquake scientist. So in the 1930s and the 1940s, it was kind of like the golden age of nudists. I know, this is random. What does nudists have to do with earthquakes? Well, let me tell you. Charles Richter and his wife Lillian, they were nudists. They loved this little movement. They loved it. They loved the nudist communities. They were popping up all over the United States. And Charles and Lillian, they were always traveling to up and coming nudist spots. So Charles and his wife are on a vacation. They're at a nudist camp, and they're all just out yay, we're nude and nothing to be ashamed of. Love that. But then a major earthquake happened. Yep, the booby bouncer struck again. Could you imagine all the bits and pieces? They were just, well, getting slapped in the face with your boobs. But anyway, so they're all naked and now things are shaking. So this happens and most people, they get scared, but not Charles. Charles was like, oh, hell yeah, like it's happening. He was really excited. So he rushed over. Well, first the earthquake happens, and then after that, he rushed over to his lab to like gather the data. And legend has it, he didn't even bother to put clothes on. He needed to get that information like ASAP, leaving a snail trail wherever he went. The Richter scale, though, is essentially a ruler for earthquakes. It gives us a number to see how much energy an earthquake released. The higher the number, the stronger the earthquake. When an earthquake happens, scientists, they use this machine called a seismograph that picks up on the shaking. You've seen it. There's that thing that shakes, you know, it's like, well, yeah, I can feel it. But the Richter scale then takes that data from those seismographs and it turns it into a number. Math, science, it's all coming together. Each number on the scale means the earthquake is 10 times stronger than the number before it. So, a magnitude 5 earthquake shakes 10 times more than a magnitude 4. Something we really don't think about, but like that's how it breaks down. Earthquakes have been happening for a really long time. They're not new. But nowadays, I feel like we hear about them more because of like social media and how easy it is to access information, right? So it does feel like they seem to be happening more, but just to calm you down, like calm your tits, like they have been happening for a long time. Here's the thing. Thousands of years ago, you know, people didn't have the Richter scale, and they definitely did not have the technology that we have now. You know, they have like these apps and stuff that can give you a warning when an earthquake is happening. I don't know if you've tried these apps. I have. I get a notification after the earthquake happened. So I'm like, yeah, thanks. I felt that, you know? And like, not to be a dick or anything, like I know like it's hard to predict an earthquake and all, like whatever, but you think we would have like, we'd have it maybe figured out. I'm getting ahead of myself. I was just disappointed the last time. It was a scary big earthquake and then my phone was like, an earthquake is coming. He already came, bitch. Anyhow, so look, back then they didn't have like earthquake resistant buildings. They didn't have any of the advantages that we do have today. So when an earthquake did hit back then, truly, it was like the world was ending. You're living on God's Etch-a-Sketch. He's like, nope, I'm done with this one. And then there goes your whole life. Remember in the 90s, there was like this movement of like Etch-a-Sketch art and like people would do like the Mona Lisa and stuff and you'd be like, whoa. You don't really see that often. A prime example of this is the Shaanxi earthquake of 1556, which is named for the place in China where it was centered. Now, to this day, it is the deadliest earthquake that has ever happened. There have been so many times when I knew I needed to see a doctor for something dumb, you know, like a sore throat or like, I don't know, my back hurts, whatever. But I tell myself, it's too much work. You know, like it'll go away. And plus, like, what's my insurance? I don't know. But, you know, it doesn't have to be like that because with this app, ZocDoc, it makes all of this a lot easier. I love ZocDoc. Jeez. If you don't know, ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and you can instantly book an appointment right there, beep bop boop. You just put in your location, filter by your insurance, and boom, you're looking at real appointment slots that you can actually book. The best part is that appointments usually happen fast, like 24 to 72 hours fast. Sometimes you can even find a same day appointment. And, you know, it's really nice because then you're like, yeah, okay, that works for me, you know? So whether you're overdue for just a general checkup or I know you're putting it off, the OBGYN situation, download ZocDoc and get on it. Take care of yourself, you know? Spread it open. Check it out. Make sure everything's good under the hood. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/darkhistory to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/darkhistory. ZocDoc.com/darkhistory. Back in 1556, China was having a golden age. They were living the dream. The country was expanding, the economy was good, people seemed to be doing okay, but they had no idea a big disaster was headed their way. So in this area, a lot of people lived in these places called like house caves. So these homes are essentially like carved into the sides of hills, and then your house would like go into the hill. Honestly, I was like, oh, I kind of love that idea. It might sound a little spooky, but it made sense with the cold climate that they were experiencing. So it kind of also helped with insulation. And at this time, they're not thinking that the house caves, are they earthquake resistant? They're not thinking that because it wasn't a concern. And then on January 23rd, 1556, people, they're in their homes and they're sleeping sound. And then out of nowhere, suddenly, there was this terrifying noise, like the loudest thunder you've ever heard. Which, side note, no one ever tells you how loud earthquakes are. They're so loud. Thank you. Then the ground started to shake. Now, before people could even react, the walls of the house caves started to crack and crumble and just fall apart. Apparently, the soil in this area was very loose. So with that in mind, listen, everything that was built on it just started to fall apart and like turn into liquid, okay? Think mudslide. The earthquake itself only lasted for a few seconds, but it started this chain reaction of disaster to come. Basically, all these homes that were built into the hills collapsed, they fell in on themselves, and anyone who was inside got like crushed to death. Now listen, this earthquake, it only lasted for a few seconds, but it set off like a chain reaction that couldn't be stopped. Houses are getting crushed. The mountains start collapsing. I know, how do mountains collapse? Well, essentially, it was a big, massive landslide, okay? Now the landslide just crashing down the hills, burying entire villages, and it buried everyone alive. So mountains, the landslide and all, it just fallen into the rivers. And it was rerouting the water, essentially leading to now the water coming into like where all the people are. These villages were flooded in minutes. Like there was not a lot of time to react whatsoever. And for the few villages that weren't flooded out or didn't have a mountain like burying them, fires broke out. Oh yeah, remember back then, it's 15 whatever. They didn't have electricity, so fire was like how they had light. These fires ended up burning for days. It didn't just affect like the everyday person either. I mean, city walls, government buildings, and temples collapsed instantly during the quake, burying thousands of people alive. There was a member of the royal family and over 100 officers who were all just crushed to death. I mean, to them, it felt like the world was ending. And honestly, I can't blame them for feeling that way. Again, it's the 1550s. People did not know what an earthquake was or like why it was happening. There was no scientific explanation. There was no like, let me look this up, All they knew, it was terrifying and unstoppable. Now, technically, this isn't the strongest earthquake on record, but it turned out to be the most deadly in history that we know of. As of right now, okay, because maybe tomorrow, we don't know, stay tuned. Historians estimate that the Shaanxi earthquake killed around 830,000 people. Yeah, get this. This wiped out over 60% of village populations in China. That's insane. Imagine more than half of the population of your hometown or like your city, wherever you live, just like disappearing, just bye. And even if you were one of the lucky ones who made it out of the earthquake, listen, the aftershocks lasted until the following year. So people were living in constant fear that, is it gonna happen again? How could you not, Some serious PTSD. I wouldn't be able to sleep either. This was one of those disasters that completely reshaped life for the survivors and changed the history of China forever. Now, back then they didn't have a way to actually measure how big this earthquake was, but experts who have looked studied this earthquake. They believed that the Shaanxi earthquake had a magnitude of between 8 and 8.3 on the Richter scale. And for a long time, this earthquake was seen as like the worst case scenario when it came to natural disaster. But Mama Earthquake was like, I'm gonna one-up you. So it's 1960. We're in Chile. Everyone's living their life, minding their own business. And then they would make history in a very, very awful way. A 9.5 magnitude earthquake hit Chile. And this is the most powerful earthquake on record to this very day. It all started with those famous tectonic plates. Yep. I guess these tectonic plates, they were moving and grooving just off the coast of southern Chile. Nobody knew, right? No one knows what's going on with plates. Not those plates. Then on Sunday, May 22nd, 1960, those plates slipped. Now when this happens, it releases an insane amount of energy, leading to an earthquake. Now this earthquake shook the ground for a solid 10 minutes. That's too long. That's way too long. If you've experienced an earthquake, usually it feels like they last forever, but usually it's only like 30 seconds or something. It's not really that long, but 10 minutes? Oh, hell no. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I'd be stop, dropping, and rolling for 10 minutes. Carmen Palante, a survivor, remembers the streets in her town turning into waves like the sea. People couldn't even stand up. The area that got hit the hardest was Valdivia, which is a city in southern Chile. People there were running for their lives, just trying to get away from the buildings because the buildings started to just crumble. Sadly, many weren't able to escape. Most of Valdivia was destroyed during the earthquake, and nothing was really left except crumbled buildings. But again, the earthquake was just the beginning. The earthquake triggered a massive tsunami that traveled across the Pacific Ocean. So, the shaking happens, you think you're in the clear. Nope. 15 minutes later, the water in the ocean started to pull back. So it pulls away from the beach. And this is a classic sign that a tsunami is about to happen. Kind of think of it like you're pulling back a slingshot, right? And it's like all the way back, and then it gets released. Ooh, that is a good analogy. I like that. Because listen, just a few minutes later, the water came back with vengeance. The Chilean coast was hit with waves that were bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. When I say big, I mean the waves were between 82 and 262 feet tall. Oh yeah, imagine a wave the size of a 26-story building coming straight at you. What are you gonna do? Nothing. Man. Now there were reports that there were 3 major waves that hit. Now, these waves completely ate up, ships, houses, cars, of course, people, anything was just swallowed by the water. When this happens, it's tragic. You either drown immediately or you're swept away. You're swept away in the water. And they say the most dangerous part about a tsunami and when it comes in is the debris in the water. A lot of people die because of what's in the water. There's cables, there's sharp objects. The water is filled with everything, and that's what will get you. After all this, the slingshot, the earthquake, all this, half of the town was swept away. The tsunami sent massive waves all over the world. 15 hours after the earthquake, Hawaii was hit with massive 35-foot waves out of nowhere. These waves wiped out an area called Hilo Bay, where 61 people died as a result. Now listen, Hawaii is 7,000 miles away from Chile, so it had a big effect. Almost a full day later, the earthquake happens, the waves, so the waves make its way all the way to Japan. 10,000 miles away from the original earthquake. It's like when you throw a rock into the river and the waves spread out. It was just doing that on a massive scale. So these massive waves like surged into the cities, destroying about 1,600 homes, and 139 people ended up dying. So the waves weren't done yet. They made their way all the way to the Philippines. Philippines were hit too. Massive waves. And as a result, 32 people were missing or dead. In total, around 1,655 people had died. And the aftermath was awful. Lakes were overfilled with water, causing flooding everywhere, which led to whole neighborhoods disappearing. Everything was in chaos. I mean, a lot of the people who lived in these areas just packed up and left. They had to rebuild their lives somewhere else. After the earthquake, a lot of people in Chile were desperate for answers. Some of the local indigenous people, like the Mapuche, were trying to understand why such a catastrophe could happen. So, they turned to their beliefs and traditions to try and make sense of it. In one community, there was a belief that when the earth and ocean were angry, there was only one way to stop further destruction: offering a sacrifice. Here, I sacrifice this bird. I don't know her. Sorry, John, but if I had to sacrifice someone, it would be you, not Paul. Sorry, I won't miss you that much. In their tradition and their belief, if Earth is mad, they're like, we have to offer a sacrifice, right? So they come up with a solution. They're like, look, the gods here are obviously really upset, and I'm gonna let you guys know, if we do a sacrifice of like a cat or whatever, it's not gonna please the gods. We gotta come up with a better solution. So we gotta sacrifice a child. Yeah. If you know me, you know I don't like cooking. I try to love it, I do, but it's hard, I like snacks. Snacks are great, but lately, I've kind of been like romanticizing cooking. Like the idea of lighting some candles, putting on an apron, pretending I'm in a movie and like sauteing onions. I like the idea of it, And I swear it all changed when I got my hands on this cookware that actually makes me want to cook. It's called Hexclad. Have you heard of it? Well, Hexclad is premium kitchen gear that actually lives up to the hype. Their pans are dishwasher safe and oven safe up to 500 degrees. They've got this patented laser etched hex pattern that gives you this chef level sear on anything you cook. Professional. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way about cookware, but Hexclad it's sexy, it's hot. It's dark, it's smooth, non-stick. It's beautiful. And if you're still scratching your head about like what to get maybe your dad for Father's Day, forget the tie, forget the world's okayest golfer mug. This year, maybe give him something that will make him feel like Gordon Ramsay. Want to subtly inspire more delicious meals cooked for you this summer? For a very limited time only, shop the Hexclad Father's Day sale for the best deals on the best gifts for dad. Just head to hexclad.com/darkhistory. Support your show and help your dad, or maybe just yourself, and unleash the inner chef at Hexclad, HEXCLAD.com/darkhistory. Make sure to let them know that, I sent you. Happy Father's Day and happy cooking all summer long with Hexclad. So while we were taking that ad break, Joan just informed me that the joke's on me. Yeah, I could offer her as a sacrifice, but she could just fly away. So there goes that idea. The spiritual communities of Chile were desperate for answers. They didn't understand how or why this could have happened. Their belief was that the gods were angry with them. One shaman named Juana interpreted the earthquake as punishment by Mother Nature for humanity's sins. This shaman believed that a sacrifice was necessary, and not just any kind of sacrifice. An animal wasn't going to cut it, What they really needed to calm Mother Nature was a pure human sacrifice. In other words, a child. Jose Luis Pinacor who was around 5 years old. All eyes were looking at him. Poor kid. He's like, what? What? I just lost my tooth. And everyone was like, uh-huh. So I guess the shaman, Juana, visited the child's grandpa, okay? And the shaman, very well respected, okay? So it wasn't weird. And explained the situation. It was like, look, gods are upset. We need a pure kid. Blah, blah, blah. We're choosing your kid. We can all judge, which we are. But the grandfather was like, okay, I understand. Here you go. And like gave the child up. Jose's mother worked in another city, so she wasn't around at the time. So she didn't know what was going on. Yep. And his father was also not around. Now, the choice to sacrifice little Jose was an act of desperation, and everyone involved did it with the full belief that it would restore peace and balance to Chile. So the shaman, Juana, apparently took Jose from his grandfather's house, took the young child to the beach, and sacrificed him. So a ceremony was done. Now, to be fair, there's not a lot of information as to like how the whole ceremony played out and like if they said certain prayer. We don't know. But what we do know is that little Jose, so sorry, his arms and his legs were removed. I know, it's like that TikTok. His arms were cut off. And like, it's seriously that. And they removed all of him, so it's just like his body, and then they like stuck him into the sand. And this was their offering. Eventually, the waves came up and the Pacific Ocean carried his body out to sea. Then they brought in the horses. I feel like they could have sacrificed the horses, but what, they didn't. But they did kill the horses, and then they ate them. And that was the ceremony. I wonder how did they use, I hope they use the horsehair for something, because you can make so much out of horsehair. Earthquakes. All of this happened in 1960. It's not ancient times, And listen, what they did, technically, it wasn't legal. It was not legal, and they were not going to get away with that. A few months after the sacrifice, 2 anthropologists were studying the spiritual practices of this Chilean community. And so they started to put some pieces together, and they're starting to suspect that a human sacrifice had taken place. Now, locals, they knew about it, but it wasn't an open secret. It's not clear how they suspected it, but what we do know is that they suspected it, and then they ended up going to the police, and they're like, hey, his arms were cut off, his legs were cut off. You might want to check that out. So the police, they go out and they investigate the situation, which led them to Juana and Jose's grandpa, and their suspicions were confirmed. Juana, Jose's grandpa, and there was a third person who they were all put on trial. They eventually confessed and were sentenced to jail. But 2 years later, Juana, Jose's grandpa, and the other man recanted their confession. They're like, yeah, everything I said, yeah, I was just kidding, LOL. It didn't happen. The judge ends up feeling bad for them, and he lets them out of prison. He said these people, quote, acted without free will, driven by an irresistible natural force of ancestral tradition, end quote. Look, I guess there's a law in Chile that says, quote, those acting out of an insuperable fear are exempt from penal responsibility, end quote. So I guess they did serve 2 years in prison. Sadly, Jose's story isn't talked about at all because it happened right after one of the worst natural disasters ever. So it's kind of easy to maybe just, there's other things to focus on too, But it goes to show the impact the earthquake had on every level, culturally, emotionally, and spiritually. There was one positive thing that came out of the Valdivia earthquake. Trying to find a positive here, okay? This awful tragedy helped seismologists understand the nature of earthquakes a lot better. So, with the goal of being more prepared. So scientists are learning something new with every major earthquake disaster. It's awful, but they're learning from it. And yes, But then like a whole wrench got thrown into the mix because in 2011, scientists are figuring out earthquakes and all this stuff, but then they were faced with a disaster that they didn't even take into account at all. A nuclear disaster. So the other day I was filming a Dark History episode for you guys, and then out of nowhere, Joan just she just took off flying. Apparently she had to send a letter or something. I don't know. She'd knocked over everything. She scared Paul half to death. And I was like, Joan, relax. Just use ShipStation. ShipStation is this platform that takes all the mess and madness out of shipping and fulfillment. Things like tracking orders, printing labels, figuring out the cheapest rate. And they make it feel so easy, a little too easy. With ShipStation, you can handle every order in one simple dashboard. And you can have automation set up so the second someone places an order, labels are printed, tracking gets sent, and boom, baby, the package is out the door. It saves so much time, and the discounts are insane. We're talking up to 88% off USPS, DHL, and UPS rates, and up to 90% off FedEx. Sounds like they're ripping us off, huh? Yeah, that's real money back in your pocket. What I love most is that ShipStation grows with you. You don't need to upgrade or switch platforms once things, take off. It's built to scale. So whether you're just starting out or you're packing orders with your friend every night, it works. Calm the chaos of order fulfillment with the shipping software that delivers. Switch to ShipStation today. Go to shipstation.com/darkhistory to sign up for your free trial. That's shipstation.com/darkhistory. So it's 2011. Scientists, they're facing a crisis they never saw coming. That's because this crisis involved a nuclear power plant. Now, a nuclear power plant, does anyone really know what's going on over there? Truly. You never hear about it. They're around. No one knows. No one knows what's going on. They're complicated. They're confusing. But essentially, this is where the government produces electricity to power homes, businesses, anything. If you watch The Simpsons, that's the only introduction and understanding I have of a power plant. Nuclear power is considered a clean energy source because it produces electricity without greenhouse gas emissions or air pollution. But the downside, there's a lot of risk when it comes to nuclear energy. When something goes wrong, it's game over, okay? It's over. Oh, you know what was good? Did you guys ever watch the HBO show, Chernobyl? Do you remember when they won an award and Tiffany Haddish was like, Chernobyl? And it was like, girl, did you watch that? I thought it was really good. It was all about the nuclear power plant disaster that happened in Ukraine. There was an explosion and it released an insane amount of lethal radiation. The radiation that came out of Chernobyl was no joke. It caused horrible lifelong illnesses. Literally, look at pictures of people who were exposed to it. It's awful, it's terrifying, it's sad. If you were even just in the area, you were affected. And it affected generations to come. They would be struggling with thyroid cancer, radiation poisoning, birth defects. And then depending on how close you were to the radiation, all that, girl, you're gonna die. You were gonna die. And still to this very day, the power plant still exists. It's abandoned and it's not safe for anyone to be near. And according to science and math and all of that, no one will be able to live there, and it won't be considered safe to live there for 20,000 years. So not anytime soon. All right. So it'll be available in the year 21,986. Maybe invest in some property now. I'm just kidding. Chernobyl had nothing to do with earthquakes, though, to be clear. It's just an example of what happens, what can happen if a power plant were to explode or whatever, So the scientists and stuff, they're focusing on earthquakes, not thinking there are power plants all over the world. What if there was a major earthquake near a power plant? No one was thinking about that yet. That is until 2011. At 2:46 p.m. on March 11th, 2011, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake hit the Tohoku region of Japan. This earthquake also, like the Valdivia earthquake, it started deep under the ocean. Apparently it was caused by something called a mega thrust fault. I know, it sounds like a Pornhub search or something. But a mega thrust fault is what happens when one tectonic plate is forced, like they're rubbing right, but then it's forced under like another one, in simple terms, okay? So this happens. 9.1, bitch. That's huge. Buildings in Tokyo, which were like hundreds of miles away from like the center of the earthquake, were shaking for 6 minutes straight. I hate that. I hate the thought of that. Again, the earthquake it does damage, but it's not the worst part. The real damage happened after the earthquake. The Tohoku earthquake triggered a ginormous tsunami. I mean, waves, they were reaching up to 130 feet high in some places. Entire coastal towns were swept away in minutes. People, homes, cars, building, everything just swallowed by the water, okay? Now, this is where the nuclear power plant situation comes into play. Because, listen, along the coast was the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. So when the earthquake hit, the nuclear power plant, they have protocol. So they automatically shut down the whole system, turn it all off so nothing would explode, which was exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Great. But then the tsunami came, okay? They weren't ready for that. So the water comes rushing in, and it crashed over the island's protective walls. Yeah, the tsunami was like cute walls. Now it goes into the power plant area. It's flooding the entire facility, knocking out the backup generators that powered the cooling systems. Now listen, without the cooling systems, the nuclear power plant began to melt down, okay? This was not good. Toxic radiation started leaking from the reactors, and then there was just a full-blown evacuation put in place in that area. They needed to get out of there ASAP. Thousands of people had to just get out of there, run for their lives, and leave behind their homes, abandoning everything, not knowing if they're even going to be able to return. So everyone gets out. But 50 engineers stayed behind to stabilize the nuclear power plant. Now, this was very brave of them because there was a very slim chance that these engineers were going to make it out alive. Now, there was 50 of them, so they would take turns working in shifts to try and limit the exposure. But they were still dealing with high radiation levels, heat, and constant risk of explosion. Firefighters and plant workers were frantically pouring in seawater to try and cool down the power plant. Again, they just didn't want this thing to explode. The whole thing was risky, it was chaotic, they were trying their best, they didn't know really what was gonna happen, but thankfully, it paid off. I mean, kind of. I mean, it didn't explode, but shit still got real fucked up. These engineers who stayed behind became local heroes. They were even given the nickname the Fukushima 50. Because of them, I mean, the thing didn't explode and make everything worse. And their bravery is still highly respected in Japan. They sacrificed their safety to protect as many people and lives as possible, knowing the risk that they were putting themselves in. That's beautiful and sad. And beautiful at the same time, This was the second worst nuclear accident after the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. Even though there wasn't a giant explosion, the power plant did leak radiation. Because of this, it created a long-term environmental and public health crisis. To this very day, entire towns are completely abandoned. It's like the city was frozen in time because when all of this was going on, all the people just had to pick up and leave. So it's like nothing changed since that moment. You can see videos and stuff. It's crazy. And again, still to this very day, the radiation levels are so high, it's very unsafe for anyone to go back. You see, radiation, it just doesn't just float in the air. it gets into the soil, the water, the food, the trees, the plants, everything is contaminated. Now, a little side note here, because I'm fascinated with the Fukushima situation and Chernobyl too. I don't know what it is. It's just it has such an eerie feeling to it. So I've gone down rabbit holes of because look, people pay tons of money to actually go and tour the area, even though it's highly radioactive, okay? But you can sign up to go on a tour. You have to pretty much agree to hey, yeah, I'm putting myself in danger, whatever. But you hop on a tour bus and then they take you on a drive and they're like, look, here it is, you're here. And then they have these radiation monitors and they'll start going off the charts. And the guide's like, yeah, well, okay, you're here though. There was a show on Netflix. It was called Dark Tourist. I really liked that show. And they had an episode about touring the Fukushima power plant area. So he goes with a group of people and it's just insane. And it's really cool and interesting because you actually get to see everything is just frozen in time. And it's just so eerie and creepy and I understand wanting to go there, but you guys, the fucking radiation, are you, okay, whatever, it's kind of whatever, but people do that, they tour it. Plus there's tons of YouTube people who go to the area and bring a camera. I'm you guys are kind of dumb, but whatever, I'm on YouTube too, so I can't hate on it, I'm dumb too. I'm getting off track. If you do tour it, let me know, send me pictures. Have you been? The earthquake not only killed thousands and destroyed countless homes, but it also made people realize that even our most advanced technology doesn't hold up against the forces of nature. The disaster even changed Japan's energy policy basically overnight. At this time, everyone kind of thought nuclear power plants were safe, but after the tsunami and also Chernobyl, people were I don't know about this, it's kind of doing a lot of harm. Between the earthquake and the tsunami, the Fukushima disaster led to thousands of deaths. The earthquake destroyed 123,000 houses and damaged almost 1 million more. Now, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us are afraid of earthquakes. Maybe not, but okay, how about me? I know I'm afraid of earthquakes, but when I was reading this story, doing this story, I realized I'm not actually afraid of the earthquake. It's what comes after it. That's the part that is dangerous and actually really scary. I've always hated earthquakes because growing up in California, there's this constant fear they love to throw our way. The big one. Oh yes, they've been talking about it all my life. The big one is coming. Are you prepared? No, I'm not actually. I'm over here, stop, dropping, and rolling. I'm not prepared, okay? I need a little, outline. What am I supposed to, whatever. But in 1994, there was a really big earthquake, and I was young, but I remember it. I remember it so much. And after that, personally, I've always been really afraid of earthquakes, and they've been telling us the big one's coming, the big one's coming. And it's okay, great, but give me solutions here. Give me advice. What should I be doing? Well, I have some hot tips for you when we come back. You know that feeling when you're so locked in on a good podcast that the real world just kind of fades away? Like this one time, Paul, listen, Paul, I have to tell you something. This is what I'm talking about. He is locked in and loaded.
What are you listening to, Paul?
I know what you're listening to. Something bony. Something spicy, aren't you? Yeah, because he is locked in. And listen, if you miss that feeling, I got good news for you. It's right around the corner with Dipsy. That's what Paul's listening to right now. He's like, I'm not here, I'm busy. I'm listening about minotaurs, doing it and stuff. Dipsy is a female-founded audio app for spicy audiobooks and more. It's created by women for women, which means you get stories that actually feel like they're written for you. You're not like an algorithm or by some guy who's imagining what boobs look like. They're like sandbags. And you're like, okay, With Dipsea, we're talking about over 1,000 audio stories, all written by professional writers and voiced by top-tier narrators. So whether maybe, you're craving a rugged cowboy, or a situationship with a professor, a sexy Scottish sailor, Dipsea has you covered. Dipsea's app makes it super easy to explore, and you can even search for your next fantasy by genre. Well, they got everything. And they release new chapters every week, so there's always something to keep you coming back. Right now, you can get a 30-day free trial plus 25% off your annual subscription when you go to dipseastories.com/darkhistory. That's Dipsea Stories, DIPSEA stories.com/darkhistory for 30 free days and 25% off your subscription. Dipseastories.com/darkhistory. Ooh. So lately here in California, we have been experiencing some earthquakes. And I'm like, uh-oh, is this leading up to something? I don't know. Growing up, the big one was described as it's going to be this insane earthquake that's going to split California in half. Pangea, a new continent's going to start. It's going to be chaos. The Golden Gate Bridge is going to freaking just, everything is just gonna be over. And again, I'm like, okay, great. So do I need a flashlight? Running shoes? What do I need here? So there is some facts behind this, okay? Scientists believe that this big one will happen along the San Andreas Fault in California. The San Andreas is one of the longest faults in the whole world. Not a great movie though, San Andreas. Did you like it? I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of lame, but whatever. Now here's the fun part that I think just keeps us on our toes. They keep telling us, it's the big one's coming. The big one's coming. We're like, when? They're like, sometime soon or not. And it's like, okay, cool. Faults. What's a fault? Sometimes it's his fault. Sometimes it's her fault. Sometimes, it's California's fault. The San Andreas Fault is the place in California where two tectonic plates meet. Remember, plates. So two of them are meeting, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. Yeah, the plates all have names too, but we don't need to get too much into that. So they meet here. But instead of fitting perfectly together, they slide past each other. Now, sometimes when they're slipping and they're sliding, they get stuck. And when they finally unstick, the ground shakes. And that's when the earthquake happens. So the San Andreas Fault is like a crack in the earth where big pieces are just trying to move and groove, but they don't always get along nicely. Over the last 1,000 years, there has been at least one major earthquake on the San Andreas Fault about every 150 years. And by major earthquake, meaning it's bigger than 7.0. But the scientists have been doing the math and they're realizing that a big earthquake hasn't hit the area in over 160 years. Great, I'm gonna sleep so well tonight. Thanks, thanks Bailey for ruining my day. So technically, according to scientists and everyone who studies earthquakes, they're like, yeah, we're overdue. It's gonna happen. We just don't know when. Look, maybe it won't happen in our lifetime, and then I'll be dead, so it won't matter. But good luck to everyone else in the future, So, the big one's coming. They know it's coming. They just can't tell us when. It's kind of like taxes. You see, taxes. They're like, hey, you owe us a bunch of money, but we don't know how much. You gotta figure it out, and then if you don't, you're gonna pay the price. It's kind of like that. It's like, I think they know, and it'll be just a way to kind of get rid of some people. But listen, stop panicking, because I have some good news. First of all, the San Andreas Fault is one of the longest faults, but it's not the deepest. Nay, she's not that deep. So it's believed that it's unlikely that an earthquake bigger than an 8.3 would happen along this fault. That's still big, but it's not, It could be worse. Now, the earthquake in Chile was along a much deeper fault, which is, it's believed that's why it reached like a 9.5. And nowadays, experts say that we have gotten more prepared, especially in areas like California, where everyone is aware of the fault lines. So now, at least in California, I'm sorry, I didn't fact check in anywhere else because I know like Kentucky's been experiencing a lot of earthquakes too. Super random, huh? We should do an episode on fracking because that's what that's about. But that's a topic for another day. Anyway, so today in California, listen, they now have laws in place where buildings are created with earthquakes in mind. Other states have like codes and stuff in place to help with like earthquakes on buildings or whatever, but California is like pretty aggressive with it. They have something called seismic codes, which require new buildings to follow seismic resistance standards. In other words, they should be built in a way where if an earthquake happens, the building won't crumble. Well, in California, they have grants available for homeowners who are living in older buildings. So you can essentially like retrofit your building and like make it stronger if an earthquake hits. If you're interested in this, it's called the Earthquake Brace and Bolt Program. It's believed that in the event of this big earthquake, less than 1 in 30,000 buildings would completely collapse. And that's kind of nice to hear. But what about the mountains and stuff? Because I feel like that shit's just gonna come down and okay. Scientists even say that the Golden Gate Bridge would survive a massive earthquake. So if you live in California, listen, good luck, Well, I'm gonna tell you what I learned. So, listen. I'm Miss Paranoid Queen. Hi, and my name is Bailey Sarian. So, when I'm paranoid or something, I like to equip myself with knowledge. So, earthquakes terrify me, right? So, I have watched a ton of YouTube videos from actual experts and scientists who explain what you should do in the moment of an earthquake. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of us, our natural instinct is to get up and freaking run. And what I learned is that is actually not the right thing you're supposed to do. Scientists and specialists actually advise not to run because with the shaking and whatnot, your ankles are gonna break. Yeah, so don't run. If you live in an old house, you can get under a door frame. That's because back in the olden days, door frames were considered to be one of the strongest parts of the home. So that's where that rumor comes from. Now, newer build homes, they're not as strong as they used to be, the door frame. So the whole door frame thing only works if you live in an older home, which kind of sucks because usually those older homes aren't earthquake safe or whatever. What I also learned was that if you are near a table, get under the table. If you have to crawl there, crawl, but get under a table. And it doesn't matter how expensive this table is or cheap this table is, because I watched tons of videos on this. And this is how ridiculous I am. I watched this whole video where they recreated big earthquakes, and they showed someone getting under a table, an expensive table, roof collapse, whatever, and it falls, when your roof collapse, it falls straight onto the table and you're safe. And then they did it with a cheap $20 table. Same thing. They got under it, they recreated a huge earthquake, the roof collapsed, and boom, it landed flat. Moral of the story is, no matter how cheap the table, that is your best bet. As long as it's not a glass table, okay? All right. So, what did you learn here? Don't run. You're gonna break your ankles. I know you're still gonna do it, but just know it's not the best idea. And if you have kids and stuff, I get it. You wanna run to them, or maybe you don't. I don't know. But either way, just know, get under a table. That is your best bet. The door frame thing, table, okay? Also, get away from windows because they can shatter, and then it's a whole mess. I did the research for you. You're welcome. I loved the example with the tables though, because I was they literally got a $10 desk to get under, and it still protected them from when everything collapsed in. gave me like some hope. Like, okay, if there is a big one, I'm going for a table. If you're in bed, I was reading, it's your best bet is to just stay there. Don't you love it? The advice. Literally, there really is like, it's like either get under a table or just like, good luck, wait it out. According to the official U.S. government emergency preparedness site, you're just supposed to drop, cover, and hold on. Drop to your hands and knees, take cover under a table or a sturdy piece of furniture, or against a wall away from the windows, and you just stay put until the shaking stops. Now listen, a lot of us actually want to run outside, and outside's not safe either, okay? When you're outside, now you're next to buildings, trees, power lines. So if you do run outside or if you are outside, you need to get away from the buildings, trees, and power lines. I know in a moment of panic, you're not like, oh, building, tree, power, like you're just freaking running, but you know, trying to help a little bit. At the end of the day, try not to run. You're gonna break your ankles. Think of your weak ankles, Martha. Not the weak ankles. If you live in a big earthquake area, like California, maybe don't keep a bookshelf right next to your bed, you know? Hey, remember when we were filming Dark History that one day and an earthquake happened? Wasn't that funny? I didn't do shit, I just sat here. You saw it live, our Dark History episode. Did we catch an earthquake on camera? We caught an earthquake on camera, everyone. That was so cool. That means we're gonna have a bigger one and we're all gonna die. Joan here. Luckily for her, she's not afraid. She's a bird. She can just fly in the air. She doesn't even know an earthquake's happening because earthquakes don't happen in the air. You know, last time I was flying, I had a thought. I had an edible too because I get nervous when I fly. But I had a thought. I was like, if an earthquake happens, will I feel it in the airplane? No, right? But it was a thought. And that's my earthquake story. Okay, look, don't be scared. It's not all doom and gloom. We really do have like a lot of tools to handle the situation. And look at it like this. Earthquakes are healthy. It's like gas, you know? Earth needs to let out those farts and have those little quakes, let it out so we don't get a huge fart. Those deadly farts that are like, holy shit, you know? So the nice little farts, you know, they're good. Think of it like that. But in the meantime, I mean, all you can do is just be prepared. Be prepared. Oh, you know what was so funny? Literally, this happened the other night. I was laying in bed. I was having a hard time falling asleep. It was one of those days where I couldn't get my brain to shut up. So I'm laying in bed in the dark. I'm finally like dozing off. And if you've ever been in an earthquake, you know you can hear the earthquake coming. So I'm laying in bed and I hear something. And mind you, this is like within seconds. I hear something, the adrenaline hits. I'm wide awake. I'm like, earthquake, it's coming. Ah! And I just, full blown, just like, ah! Well, turns out it was my air conditioning starting up. Hey, I mean, look, at least I'm paying attention. And that was my story. I know, exciting. It was just the air conditioning. It wasn't an earthquake. But yeah, I'm paranoid, I won't lie. Anywho, our next episode is one you won't want to miss. I'm going to be talking about a phenomenon called Chippendales. An empire built on naked, oiled-up bodies and bachelorette parties. But what was really going on behind the scenes? You'd be surprised. This is a story of greed, betrayal, and even murder. How exactly did a strip show become a multi-million-dollar sensation? And what deadly secrets brought it all crashing down? Ooh, the real story is so much darker than you can even imagine. So tune in next time when we talk about the dark history of Chippendales. Now, I'd love to hear your reaction to today's story. Make sure to leave a comment below so I can see what you guys are saying, and your comment might even be featured in a future episode. But my favorite part, let's read a couple of comments you guys left me. Hope McElligott 4313 left me a comment saying, "Random things you say. My office nicknamed me Random Chick because of all the random stuff I say. We would have the best conversations, Bailey. Hope, I love that. I got a lot of random knowledge that really doesn't fit any type of conversation. So I love when I sit down with someone and I could be like, oh my God, yeah, let me tell you something. Did you know graham crackers was all about masturbation? And then the other person was like, what? That's crazy. Well, here's what I learned, blah, blah. Yes, Hope, yes. This is why I love doing this show. And I do it for people like you who just, the randoms out there, It's for you. Thank you so much for watching. And don't take it personally. Just start dropping some hot knowledge on them. Some hot history gas. Mackenzie McCormack 2317 left me a comment saying, girl, keep doing what you are doing. I'm an Amazon driver and listen to you faithfully every day, even if I've watched them already. You get me through my shift and I legit laugh out loud because you are so funny. Mackenzie, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. I'm sure being an Amazon driver these days is rough. I appreciate your freaking hard work. But most of all, I appreciate you telling me this. It's so nice. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I could hang out with you, at work. I love that. It melts my heart. Thank you so much for listening and for watching, and I just really appreciate you. Be safe out there. I know everyone's ordering everything from Amazon. You guys must be so busy. Hey, should I do an Amazon episode? Let me know. I won't tell anyone if you want to feed me some information. I can keep you, anonymous if you want. Angel Wooldridge 7583 left us an episode suggestion. Please do a dark history on Suarez. Listen, I see your comment and I appreciate it. I'm having a really hard time saying Swarovski, the jewelry company, and I apologize for that. Now, right off the bat, I would love to do this episode, but the fact that I'm having a hard time saying Swarovski, it's not coming out. I'm sorry. I'm really trying. The fact that I can't say this word is making me think that I want to do it, but how will I get around that word? Oh no. Okay, let me do some practice pronouncing it, but while I'm doing that, I'll start looking into it. Did you watch the episode we did about weddings? We did a dark history episode about marriage and weddings and whatnot. We kind of lightly talked about the diamonds. The beer, weird name for a diamond company, first of all. But that in itself was really interesting. So I definitely think you're onto something here. This could be a really interesting story. I just hope I can deliver. Swarovski. Thank you. I appreciate you. Swarovski. Well, you guys, I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know what you think down below. Keep on commenting. Maybe I'll read your comment if I can. I'm gonna try. I always do. And hey, did you know you can join me over on my YouTube where you can actually watch these episodes? Yeah, on Thursday after the podcast airs. Maybe you're a visual person. You Bailey, I want to see something. Well, I'm here for you. And while you're there, you can also catch my murder, mystery, and makeup. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. And if you don't know, Dark History is an Audio Boom original. I want to give a special thank you to our expert, James Carter, PhD, author of Champions Day, The End of Old Shanghai. And I'm your host, Bailey Sarian. I hope you have a good day, you make good choices, and I'll be talking to you guys really soon. Goodbye.